Hey everyone, my name's Trapixium, and today is going to be a fun one. Allow me to introduce you to my manager slash agent. She's been behind me the whole time, but then again, that's because I had a string in my hand. I'd like you all to meet Jazzy. Oh, don't be shy. Don't be shy. This is Jazzy. Yep, she's head of HR, QR, PR, and our community manager. She is one busy cat, and she still finds time for naps. Amazing. So, this week, we are going to be talking about Ajani Goldmane, everyone's favorite cat, next to Jazzy. So, let's get into it. Ajani Goldmane, the Leonin adversary of tyrants and the vengeant mentor of heroes, was born to the plane of Naya, a shard of the megaplane of Alara, and due to his albino fur, started life on the back foot, stigmatized for looking white as death. Ajani's parents disappeared at a young age and was left alone with no one to care for him, except for his older brother Jazal, who quickly grew through the ranks of their tribe to the rank of Ka, leader of the Quasal Valley Pride. Jazal hoped that in accepting the position his brother would be more accepted in the Pride, but unfortunately Ajani was barely tolerated with only one Leonin to call his friend, the tribe shaman. Ajani himself was quite unique beyond his snow white fur. Ajani was capable of manipulating the magic of the soul. He could see into them, look upon the very essence of their spirits, and call it forth to manifest it in a variety of ways. Despite the tribe's lamentations, Ajani was the best healer in the tribe, to no acceptance of the pride, much to Jazal's dismay. He just wanted his brother to be accepted. It just seemed that the pride wanted nothing to do with him. Ajani accepted this, for the sake of Jazal of course, not wanting to cause him any trouble. On one specific day, Ajani was attacked by a group of humans but was defended by Jazal. It was odd considering they were after Ajani specifically, wanting to repay his brother. Ajani went in search of a feast for the tribe's upcoming celebration. Ajani tracked down and killed a godsire, a giant beast capable of easily killing him. Ajani felt great pride, however, this kill was stolen from him by a rival from the tribe known as Tanakh, who beat Ajani mercilessly and took the beast for himself to bring respect to his own name. Ajani was left to drag himself back home, not doing anything as to risk his brother's position. The night of the celebration after the revelries— Party! Not now, Zen! A figure made his way into the camp past all the sleeping cats. As the being came upon the fire, it dropped a tank of dark magic into it, unleashing a horde of shades upon the unsuspecting tribe. Ajani lost his eye in the attack and went in search of Jazal, desperate to find him. Ajani made his way down to his lair and found his brother dead. Next to his body lay his own black axe, the dark counterpart to Ajani's golden axe. Covered in blood, Jazal was killed with his own weapon. Ajani held his brother, and suddenly he heard his voice. And when he opened his eye, he wasn't on Naya anymore. Ajani's spark ignited and planeswalked to another shard known as Jund, a land of absolute savagery, and it was there where he met the planeswalker Sarkhan Val, who protected him from the dragon known as Karthus. The two sat, and Ajani told the mad dragon speaker his story. Sarkhan gave the Leonin some advice. Take hold of your anger. Search for the vengeance you deserve. Use your abilities to find your brother's killer. Sarkhan taught Ajani how to planeswalk back to Naya, and went on in search of his brother's murderer. He made his way back to his brother's lair, and all he found was his brother's axe. Ajani took it and forged what would become the weapon he is best known for using, his axe staff. After some searching, Ajani found his brother's remains. He had been cremated, but in the Pride Center. Ajani covered his body in his brother's ashes and then went off to find Tanakh, convinced it was him. When he found Tanakh at the edge of a cliff, Ajani went ballistic, berating Tanakh. It was then he admitted that he always respected Ajani. This didn't stop him from dangling him off a cliff and threatening to let him go, and trust me, he followed through with that promise. Of course, Tanakh grabbed Ajani, taking the vengeful cat with him, Thankfully, Tanak's clothes snagged, stopping the fall, leaving Ajani hanging by Tanak's foot. It was then he was knocked off, and Ajani was sent falling down the cliff, straight to Earth. Critically wounded, Ajani planeswalked away. 2 weeks later, Ajani awoke from a coma. He had planeswalked to... Plainsville? I don't know, he wound up on Bant, okay? Being cared for by the knight known as Elspeth Tyrell, a planeswalker who found him. After coming to, Ajani prepared to leave, but Elspeth stopped him. But Ajani moved past her and told her that worlds are closer than you think. Ajani returned to Naya and confronted Tanak's mother. Stop confronting Tanak, Ajani. This never ends well for you. Stop. But he did it anyway. Tanak's mother told Ajani that a hero named Marisi had something to do with the attack. Ajani confronted him, but was interrupted by an elf named Mael, who told Ajani to find the dragon Nicol Bolas. The only place to find the dragons was Jund, so Ajani went to Jund and found no Jund. The conflux was on. Ajani was discovered by a Jund chieftain known as Kresh, and the whole clan of Neltoth, who aligned themselves with the motive of slaying the dragon. After a long journey, they arrived at the borders of Grixis, where the two fought Rakamar, a rival of Kresh, and of course, Ajani Lightning Helixed for the win. Much to his surprise, Mael found him, and asked Ajani to lead them into battle against the horde of dragons led by Sarkhan Vol. During this fight, Ajani found his brother's murderer, none other than the being Zaliki, who was manipulated by Marisi. Marisi had been killed by Zaliki for being manipulated. Much to Ajani's dismay, his quest for vengeance would go unsated. Suddenly, the group was confronted by none other than the Elder Dragon Planeswalker Nicol Bolas. Bolas appeared in front of both the Jund and Naya armies and began absorbing the Maelstrom. In a final bid to stop Bolas, Ajani severed everyone's mana bonds and absorbed the last bit of the Maelstrom old Pugface hadn't gotten to yet. Using that energy, Ajani called forth a mirror of Bolas' soul. Bolas was promptly banished from Alara as a result of the battle. Dang, Ajani got that big Alara energy. After the result of the Conflux Wars, Ajani was offered Jazal's old position as Ka of the Pride, but he rejected, the only thing he had ever wanted, and he didn't want it anymore. He left Naya and left it in the hands of Zaliki. Months later, after the conflux, Ajani started tracking down Elspeth. He found her in the gladiator pits of Urborg fighting Koth the Hammer. He stopped her from killing him and took her home, beseeching her to go home back to Bant. She could still help, and was worth more there than here in the pits. She disagreed, and Ajani accepted that his friend was broken. As a final kindness, Ajani returned Elspeth's armor and sword, then left. After a prolonged period, Ajani couldn't bear to have Elspeth alone, to destroy herself, and promptly set about tracking her down, finally arriving on Theros. Ajani met up with the king of the Leonin Brymaz, and the pair spent a lot of time together, catching up on what had happened in the time before Ajani's arrival. Theros had fallen into chaos as the reveling Xenagos had usurped the throne of the gods. And as a result, Elspeth had been banished from her home. As a favor to Ajani, Brymaz ordered his people to find Elspeth. They were reunited in Tetmos. Ajani saw the pain in Elspeth, but she wouldn't talk about what happened. She sought to make things right. Ajani agreed to stand with her. The pair traveled to the edge of the world and straight to the entry point of Nykthos. Elspeth was forced to undertake an ordeal of one of the gods. Ajani begged Elspeth to choose Thassa the sea god's ordeal, but instead chose Erebos, god of the dead. Ajani was upset by this and called her a fool. Once Elspeth passed the ordeal, the pair did the deed and killed Xenagos. Badly fatigued, they were warned that Heliod and Erebos were after them, only to be cut off by Heliod, who stabbed Elspeth with her own weapon. So close to getting out. Ajani carried his friend back to Theros, and readied himself to fight the agents of Erebos, who would come for him. Brymaz and his men came and took him away for his own good. Ajani reawoke in Tetmos, where the pair had set off from, completely healed. Ajani didn't know what to do. He had never been without a cause to fight for. It was then Ajani went about tearing down Heliod's good name by preaching about just what the sun god had done to his own champion in all the major policies. He asked everyone to turn away from the gods, who fed off their worship. Ajani was honored and now wears Elspeth's cloak for his friend and her memory. Ajani went to Kamigawa when he was certain everything would be fine without him. He needed to grieve for his friend. He traveled to the home of Tamio, the moon sage. Ajani healed in the company of his good friends. During this stay, Ajani learned of the crime Tezzeret's Infinite Consortium had committed on Kamigawa, and also informed Tamio that Elspeth saw Tezzeret alive on New Phyrexia. Conflicting point considering everyone thought he was dead. Ajani immediately got to work searching for Tezzeret to bring him to justice. A month later, Ajani learned that Tezzeret was leading consulate on Kaladesh, and promptly planeswalked there. Ajani set up his connections with the Renegades and their leader Pia Nalar and Ovia Pashiri. As it turns out, both had been taken into custody by the Renegades for, well, being renegades, and was informed of Tezzeret's involvement. Ajani then went about searching for Ovia and tracked her to Dund, where Ajani found her in a cell filling with poisonous gas. Ajani broke the cell open and found Ovia alongside two other planeswalkers, Chandra Nalar and Nissa Ravane. The four promptly escaped after the consulate crackdown. Ajani gave continuous aid to the Renegades, and healed Chandra and Ovia after their injuries following the street brawl against Captain Baral. After the Renegade victory, Ajani was welcomed into the Gatewatch, an organization that seeks to protect the multiverse from destruction. Ajani agreed resoundingly and took the oath to protect the innocent, fight tyranny, and help every being find their place. It was then the Gatewatch made plans to fight Nicol on Amonkhet, and Ajani objected, citing that maybe confronting the Elder Dragon planeswalking pug-faced dragon was a bad idea considering that was the seat of his power. Ajani wanted to wait for more allies. Ajani went to go search for them, telling the Gatewatch to regroup on Dominaria. Ajani went to Dominaria and recruited Joyra and her Weatherlight crew to help her in a specific job. It was then Ajani learned that only Gideon and Liliana made it and were distracted by Belzenlock. Ajani went to go find more help, and well, that was the last time we saw him. Where do you all think he went? Ajani is probably one of the most endearing and enduring characters we currently have in the story. He just wants everyone to be safe, which is a lovely sentiment, and clearly he's willing to fight for it. It's why he's one of my favorite characters. Next to Xenagos, of course. Speaking of, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like down below and let's talk about this. Who do you think Ajani is going to bring to fight Bolas? If you feel like supporting the rivalry Xenagos and I take part of here every week, hit that subscribe button, and until next time, may the Lotus watch over you.